operations within IRS, including the taxpayer advocate, but wouldn't it be pounding foolish for us to diminish the resources that the taxpayer advocate has to make sure that people first voluntarily comply with their obligation to file a tax return, but two, to do it correctly so that you don't have to then use all your personnel later on to make corrections to someone who's making modest income who just happened to make an innocent error.
Sir, I agree that the taxpayer advocate provides a valuable service, but as the acting commissioner, balancing all of the enforcement and service needs, I think it's equally important that we provide equivalent level of services across the board so that the cases don't end up with the taxpayer advocate. So it's the trying to balance.
Yeah, and I know that most of us would hate to have to sit in your seat to try to respond to some of those questions because you do have to balance all the obligations you have with the monies that you're given. I would just hope that in the process of budgeting, you all, not so much you all, but Office of Management and Budget, the White House, would not be penny wise and end up being not just pound foolish, but foolish with all those taxpayers who are already burdened but are still willing to voluntarily comply with their obligation to file a tax return. And I think it would just be such a sin for us to send a message to Americans who are very modest income that we don't care to have them comply with something that most of us don't wish to have to do, and that is pay our taxes. And I was shocked when I learned that the President's budget called for an $8 million cut to the Taxpayer Advocate's Office. Mr. Chairman, I know my time has expired, so I'll just say one last thing and we'll ask a question. The taxpayer assistance centers that you have, same thing. To not ramp up those centers where for the money that we pay as taxpayers to fund that program within IRS that gives assistance to, again, people who are voluntarily trying to comply with their tax requirements, to not have those offices open long enough so that people who work long hours can take part or participate in those programs that you make available to get good advice so they don't have to then pay someone else a pretty big fee to do something very simple, which someone in your offices, if you had the resources and the staffing, could answer. That's what gives us a bad name, both as government and as the IRS, when we seem to make it more difficult for people to do voluntarily what they know they must do. I just think that if you move towards doing these things and have such a great return, the Taxpayer Advocate's Office, the Taxpayer Assistance Centers, the low-income tax centers, we would get much greater response from the American people that we're really trying to be helpful, not just take their money. I thank you, the Chairman, and I thank the two witnesses.